Simplicity Research Hub provides independent expert commentary and thought leadership on economic trends within Aotearoa. This content is their own opinions and is provided for general information only.
Kia ora, I'm Marco Fon, and this is Life is Loading, a podcast where we delve into the challenges facing those in the quarter life stage. New Zealand has a problem. You might be familiar with tall poppy syndrome, a term that is often attributed to Aotearoa and Australia. It targets people who succeed or are aspirational. Society calls them tall poppies. We cut those people down, whether it's deliberate or by accident, stunting their growth to reach their full potential. And we do it to ourselves too. New Zealand research shows that this way of thinking has become a cultural mindset for many Kiwis, affecting ambition, innovation, and creativity. What's particularly interesting is that a paper from the University of Auckland on this topic says that many of their survey participants express interest in leaving the country to escape the judgmental eyes of others, which threatens the economy in the process. This suggests that tall poppy syndrome not only takes a toll on mental health, but also has a flow-on effect on the economy. E Tu Tangata is an organisation set on tackling the effects of tall poppy syndrome. Their co-founder and CEO, Geldard, joins us on the podcast today to break all of this down. Jay, thank you for being here.
It's great to be here.
Cheers. Can you start off telling us a little bit more about tall poppy syndrome and what that meaning actually is?
Yeah, tall poppy syndrome is, you need three aspects for tall poppy syndrome to be working. First of all, you need to have the tall poppy, so someone who stands out, who we perceive as being successful, and then you need to have the cutter, and then so that person is someone who cuts them down, and tall poppy syndrome is the third element, is actually cut them down to our level. So there's those three things need to play out.
Gotcha. So it's sort of in a way, just somebody who's doing the cutting, somebody who's being cut down. It's widely believed that this term is originated in the 80s. So do you think it's kind of accurate and reflective of sort of a bigger Kiwi identity?
Yeah, it was the name sort of came around in the 80s, but it's been there for a lot longer than that. So it's a big part of our identity as a culture, as a nation. And so tall poppy syndromes come from when New Zealand, the British settlers came across. They didn't want the downtown Abbey egalitarian, you sort of like posture coming here.
Yeah.
And so they want to set up a culture where everyone was the same. And then you got Māori culture, which is big on humility, sort of mash those two cultures together. And actually you have tall poppy syndrome thrives. And so we're trying to do humility. So we're trying to keep people humble, but also you're trying to not create a class system like they had in, and they want to try and create a healthy egalitarian system, which actually sounds nice in principle, but actually is very hard to control.
Yeah, the mixture of cultures. I didn't quite realize how that kind of, makes a breeding ground for tall poppy syndrome. So do you think it's right to consider that it's almost just a New Zealand problem? I know that the term is kind of used between Australia and New Zealand, but there's other similar terms that are found in other cultures. Japan, the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. Don't put your head above ground level, and some Dutch have that saying. Is it something that's found in other places, or why is it so prevalent in New Zealand and Australia?
Yes, it is found in other cultures. We have termed it tall poppy syndrome. Now that term is becoming a global term that gets used across the world. But so New Zealand, that's an interesting question because we are the best at it. We have a culture where, especially in New Zealand, Australia is similar, but there are some differences. New Zealand has an unhealthy culture where anyone is perceived to be successful. We are allergic to anyone who shows confidence or is just showing a bit of like resilience to, I want to dream big and do this sort of stuff. And so Kiwis are allergic to that, and we try and cut people down for being just confident in what they want to do. Does that make sense? So,
yeah, it does.
So it is a global problem. I think social media hasn't helped now. So now we are, seeing people on social media and going, oh, that's actually, makes me feel a bit stink about myself. And so that's what tall poppy syndrome is we cut others down to make ourselves feel taller.
Right, yeah.
And so you think about it, I'm 6'8", I'm talking to you today, and you cutting me down at the knees doesn't actually make you any taller.
Yeah, true.
You haven't grown.
Yeah.
You've just hurt those around you.
Yeah.
And so tall poppy syndrome is when we cut others down to make ourselves feel taller, and then I do the same to you, and then we've all agreed that I've made it my job to keep you humble, and you do it to me. But we do it through, I'd say passive aggressive, or sometimes it's pretty public. We just cut others down, and no one calls it out publicly because it's part of our DNA now. It's part of our culture. And so we'll get into that some more. But yeah, it's fascinating being on this journey, learning about it and becoming a bit of an expert in this space, because we've named this thing called tall poppy syndrome as a country. We've shamed it. People are leaving the country because of it.
Yes.
And are going to other countries because they can have, if they've got a dream or aspiration, people will blow wind in each other's sails. But in New Zealand, we have this culture where you share a dream aspiration and I will just tell you why you can't do it. Or I'll see that as a allergic reaction to confidence, and so I'll knock it out of you.
Yeah, and that's a huge thing you bring up, which we might touch on later, talking about moving a different country. I guess it just shows how sort of hard it is to navigate self-comparison, because in a way it may sometimes be a good thing, you're trying to aspire and that sort of thing, but in other ways you're just, you have this feeling of jealousy. So why do we put a creative label on something like tall poppy syndrome rather than just referring to it as jealousy? Or how can you distinguish those two things?
So I think tall poppy syndrome has become part of our identity as a nation. I think we like the fact that we are known for that. But then when you talk about it and you go, is this something we want to have part of our culture? Like, example would be, we have a culture where someone who is trying their hardest at something academically or sports or aspirationally, we call them a tryhard.
Yeah.
And so let's have a talk about that. When I fly to Auckland next week, I want my pilot to try hard.
Yes.
When I've had heart surgery, I want my cardiothoracic surgeon to try hard in all aspects of their life, from their training to their prep to the surgery. And so we have this thing where we go, actually, why is it a bad thing to try hard? Because it's part of our identity. We've now made it part of our identity, so we love it. So when you ask about the label of tall poppy syndrome, Kiwis love that as part of us. Now, going back to your question regarding jealousy, I think there's some undercurrents that are happening, and I think that jealousy and envy are two parts that play in the hands of tall poppy syndrome. So let's just stop and distinguish between what's the difference between jealousy and envy, because what happens is that we use these words like
synonymously.
Yeah, so we just think it's the same. So jealousy is when you have something. Often it's a social bond or a relationship with someone. So you have a relationship with someone, and then you see your best friend now connecting with someone else.
Yeah.
And so jealousy is something that you have, and then you're jealous of what these people are now doing.
Yeah.
Envy, on the other hand, is something you don't have. And so envy is when I don't have that thing. So I don't have the sneakers that you have. And I look at your sneakers and I go, oh, actually, I want that. So an envy can function in two ways. There's good envy and bad envy. So bad envy goes, I look at your shoes and go, I don't have those shoes. I'm not envious. And so I rip you out so I feel better about not having those shoes. Good envy is when I see your shoes and go, actually, that's awesome. I'm going to work hard, to save up and to get those shoes too.
Right. And so it can go both ways.
Yeah, it goes both ways. So there's this undercurrent where jealousy and envy are part of our identity, as part of our culture, and those come up in the form of tall poppy syndrome. So if I see someone who is, maybe I'm in a job and I see them getting a promotion and that makes me feel envious, so I cut them down, I speak behind their back, I do anything I can to make myself feel better about the fact that they got that over me. Or maybe a jealousy, you're on you're on a work project, and then you've done some work and someone's come in and they get a bit of the recognition more than you, and you feel jealous about that, something you felt that you've lost. And so, so again, you cut them down to make yourselves feel better. So jealousy and envy are undercurrents of a way we function to keep ourselves really at a just above average level.
Above average, base level, yeah.
It's horrendous.
Yeah, it is really interesting. Like for people who are starting off, in new jobs, say young professionals and that sort of thing, how does tall poppy syndrome affect them specifically? especially if they're feeling envy for like a job or something.
Yeah. Because you've been born into this nation, you have been trained to think and you've been affected by tall poppy syndrome. So when you go into the workforce, you carry this with you. Even when you leave New Zealand, you're going to carry this with you globally. So this is not just a New Zealand problem. It's a New Zealand problem for all Kiwis around the world.
Right.
And so the reason I say that is because when you come into the workforce, you have been trained to downplay your achievements. You've been trained to not put your hand up and back yourself. You've been trained to have a fear of failure. So somehow failure is fatal. And so we need to create a culture where you can back yourself, where you can go, actually, I can do that. And by putting my hand up and saying, can I give that a go? That's not arrogance.
Yes.
That's just you going, I'm going to give it a go. By you not trying something because you're worried about failing, by not trying, that is failing.
It's a missed opportunity.
That's a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
So we hear of board members around the world who could maybe put their hand up and actually take on a task on a board, maybe in London or New York. I'm hearing feedback from Kiwis all across the world who are saying, I'm seeing awesome, amazing Kiwis who are not putting their hand up because they are worried that they're not ready or they fear of failure or they don't want to become across like too cocky. And so then they're missing out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what a shame. So when you're entering the workforce, just like back yourself, ask questions, give things a go. It's okay if you fail. It's not a failure. It's just you didn't get there the first time and you learn from it and you adapt. And so I think we need to check the voice in our head. Tall poppy syndrome also plays out best in New Zealand culture when you cut yourself down before others do.
Yes.
And so that looks really, really unhealthy when you go, actually, I suck, I'm nothing, I'm worthless. And you don't realize that you're carrying that voice that is only going to like trip you up in your own success.
Yeah.
And so again, that's part of the culture. And so you've got to really try and listen to the voices in your head and go, am I the tall poppy who's cutting myself down now? Like people have told you things and you've believed it.
It's all around you.
And now success in New Zealand is when you cut yourself down before I do.
To think about what you're saying there, it really starts young as well. I can think back to high school, when you get exam results and people ask you how you did, your automatic response is, I didn't do that great, because you're almost prepping other people in a way
That's right.
before they do it to you. It's sort of like a, self-defense system. It's really interesting that you say that. I guess with all of this in mind, there's so much pressure around tall poppy syndrome alone, but what other sorts of impacts does this have in a wider sense, with the cost of living crisis and worsening mental health in general? Do you think it's fair to say that Kiwis leaving to places like Australia to try and escape these sort of things, is that all around tall poppy syndrome, or is it kind of a compounding factor?
I think it's a compounding factor, but you think about it, we have the highest teen suicide in the world. Like, and you ask the question why, but then what affects us is the fact that we're saying dream big but not too big. And so then you live in a country where you're trying to be aspirational but you get knocked down for being aspirational. So you're like, why do I want to live here? And so really trying to go, okay, let's name the fact that tall poppy syndrome is just a culture where we want to be just above average and we want people to not stand out and we want people to be like us. And we think about that as a nation, like that sounds boring. That's not a colourful nation that I want to live in. Like it's your imperfections that make you unique. It's those things you're trying to hide that make you you. And I think it breaks my heart that we live in a nation where we just want to be like blah, average. Like, does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I've
at that base level, you kind of talk about.
Yeah. So I have a question that I ask people, and for your listeners, this is going to be a challenging question. But in New Zealand culture, if I was to ask anyone to rate themselves out of 10, 10 being I'm amazing, 0 being I'm low, everyone listening to this podcast has to think that they are about a 6 or 7.
Yeah.
And if I was to go into a workplace and go, who here, let's say we go into a staff room, and I'd ask the question, who here thinks that they are 8, 9, or 10? And then no hands go up. And if there were some hands to go up, the laughter would happen, because that laughter is telling those people, put your hand down. And then I'd ask the question, okay, so we're addressing the laughter. And then I'd ask the question, who here wanted to put their hand up but knew not to? And every single time those hands go up.
Yeah.
And so you will ask the question, why are people looking for greener grass? Because this culture is very it has a huge effect on our mental well-being. And then we wonder why we have a crisis in this nation. And so for us, my wife and I, Nikki and I, tall poppy syndrome has become like the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
That we've named the elephant, we've shamed the elephant. We see the effects of it. We're picking up all the pieces, like,
Yes.
1 in 4 young people are highly fatigued, depressed, anxious. So we see the effects of it, but actually at no point have we ever gone, do we want this to be part of our culture? And so we've made it our job to go, let's just address the elephant in the room and let's see it gone from there. And we have some strategies around that, but that's what we're trying to do.
And that's so awesome. Like, obviously, it's always been lingering. It's always been there. And for you to step up and do something about it, it's really, really, really cool. Another thing I just want to touch on briefly as well that we talked about earlier, research done by the University of Auckland shows that this issue especially affects young entrepreneurs, professionals, and that sort of thing, having a negative flow-on effect onto the New Zealand economy as a whole. What sorts of things and what can you talk about more how tall poppy syndrome is affecting New Zealand at that economic level because these people are leaving?
Yeah, it's not even that they're leaving, it's just that they are trying to restrain the giftings, the uniqueness that makes them special. You think of the people who are the tall poppies of New Zealand. You've got Kate Shepherd, Ernest Rutherford, you've got, the Rocket Labs, like all these things come for people who go, I don't give a toss, I'm going to give this a go.
Yeah.
So there's special, unique people who've gone on to do that. I think for most of us, though, we're aware of our surroundings. And so when we start pulling back, when we start not trying too hard, that has an effect economically on our companies. Like, I want all my team, when they work for us, to give it their blimmin' best and try their hardest. And so I think if we had a culture where we were the opposite of tall poppy, where we celebrate each other, where we blew wind each other's sails, where we were like, you are awesome, what a world that would be. Like, this nation and the economy would pick up by people backing each other. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So how can it not have an effect if we're telling people to dream big but not too big?
But not too big.
Try hard but not too hard. It's like, this is broken, people. So that's why companies all across the country are beginning to have the conversation, because when we name it, we're like, well, is this what we want to be part of our culture? And people are like, actually, no. And so that's what we're on the mission for, is shifting that culture and giving people strategies around that.
So, Jay, you're part of E Tu Tangata. Can you describe it to the listeners more about what that role is and what E Tu Tangata does?
Yeah, so E Tu Tangata is about tackling tall poppy syndrome within a generation, which is our BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal. Now, I recommend everyone listening to this, you need a BHAG in your life. You need something that's bigger than yourself that you need to try and, knock off. And so tall poppy syndrome has been part of our identity for so many years, and it affects me. I was a youth worker for many years, and so my wife and I went to the UK, and as we talked to people over there, they asked us, what do you guys do in New Zealand? And I'm like, oh, we're youth workers. And they're like, oh, great. So you must have an easy job. And when you describe the state of the nation around, our suicide rate of teenagers is 2.5 times the average of the OECD. Like, just sit with that for a moment. So 17 of every 100,000 young people take their life. In New Zealand culture, with our teenagers, 1 in 4 young people are highly fatigued, depressed, anxious. And so when you describe that to those people in England, they looked at me and said, no, this doesn't add up. You're on the other side of the world, 3 hours flight for anyone. You're not dealing with Brexit, American politics. You don't have refugees crossing a border on a regular basis. And so, like, what's going on? And I didn't have an answer to that. And then I remember reflecting about it, the fact that I was thinking about like a tree. And if you think about a tree and it has like branches, you got depression, self-harm, suicide, we're throwing everything at the tree and the fruit's not getting any better. Actually, the stats are getting worse. And so I remember thinking about it at the time going, if we're going to be a healthy tree as a nation, we need to do this at a root issue, like a root level. And so I realized that in New Zealand, we have a culture, we have a root issue of this belief system called tall poppy syndrome, which is when we cut others down to make ourselves feel taller. And that's when I realized, holy moly, this is a big problem. I went back to New Zealand, looked at the research, and the research actually says it's your friends and family, those closest to you, who make it their job to think that you are a 6 or 7 out of 10. So you haven't asked them to humble you. They make it their job, bless them, to keep you thinking that you're just above average. And then success is when you cut yourself down before others do. So when I go around where I'd meet pilots, CEOs, and I say, I can guarantee you, because you live in New Zealand, when you share what you do, you downplay your role. And so a principal will say, oh, I'm an educator. A pilot will say, I'm in the aviation industry. And so then you press into them and go, well, what do you mean? And so slowly they're like, I actually am a pilot.
Yeah.
I was like, why wouldn't you say that from the beginning and make it less, awkward for me to try and pull that out of you?
Yeah.
But that's what tall poppy syndrome is. So then I went and surveyed teenagers, and I asked the teenagers, would you rather me call you a dick or give you a compliment? And then 7 out of 10 said, call me a dick. And then actually I realized that this is not just aimed at teenagers, this is actually aimed at you and I. Like, think about the compliment. If I was to give you a compliment, you would rather be, often, even adults, we don't even know how to receive and give compliments.
Yeah.
You're right.
It'd be a bit uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I get the sense of what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. So we avoid it, we downplay it, we ignore it. That's the fun one. We pretend like it didn't happen. And so that's when I realized we've got a problem here. When we as a nation would rather rip each other out, like that's a social bond. Like the more you rip someone out, the more we love you, until something bad happens and we say, oh, sorry, we didn't mean to go that far. And so that's a really unhealthy social bond that we do. As tall poppy syndrome is, publicly we go out as mates and we rip you out because that's how much we love you.
Yeah.
Like, think about that. That's quite broken.
Yeah.
And then we wonder why we have, all these organizations trying to help men and women and, lift up their, the view of themselves, because we're getting depressed, we're getting anxious, we're getting like a crisis is happening out there.
Yeah. Jay, if you had to give the listeners one thing to take away when it comes to understanding tall poppy syndrome, one thing from today that you could give them, what would that be?
Listen to what the voices are happening in your head. Like, I can guarantee you that people listening to this have tall poppy themselves, or maybe have got the voice of a parent or a sibling who has just really told you, no, you can't. And so I think we need to look at this and take a step back and go, am I tall popping myself? Why am I doing that? Am I envious or jealous about anyone else around me that when I see them on social media and I'm like, it brings up unbearable feelings? So when we talk about this conversation, you cannot unsee it. It'll sit with you guys for the rest of your lives, this conversation. More the fact that it's about, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And so think about the voices in your head. Think about the way you're speaking to people. Are you lifting them up or cutting them down? I talk about the fact that a leader, in any sort of leader, helps those who are struggling do better, but also should be helping those ahead of them do better as well. And what kind of leader are you? Are you a leader who, you may help people up, that's cool, but what kind of leader are you with those who are ahead of you? Are you humbling them, or are you pushing them further along? Like, imagine a world or a country where we actually
lead from the back.
Yeah, lead from the back. And that's sort of the challenge for us is, what are you speaking of yourself and what are you speaking to those around you?
Cool. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Jay. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, and thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
No worries. It's been great.
Cheers. That's it for this episode of Life is Loading. This podcast is part of the Kokako Network. It was produced by Marcus Allen, Alexandra Bogdanova, and Alice Homer. It was edited by Dom Hamilton, with graphics by Anaya Pasha and Ella Dickens, and technical support from Ame Courtney. For more content from Kokako, head to our website kokako.media or catch us live on 96.1 and Channel 200.